Good afternoon. I am Kevin McCann, the attorney that represented Jeffrey Abramowski in his fight for justice. I've been representing Mr. Abramowski for 6 years now. We met in 2019, and at that time, we both had some hope, but to actually think that we'd make it to this day was not something we really highly expected. So we're thrilled. I have a quick statement I'd like to read, and then we can open this up to questions. This has been a tremendous week of justice for Mr. Abramowski and his family. They have worked tirelessly for well over 2 decades to prove his innocence, and words cannot truly describe the emotions that we are all currently feeling. Mr. Abramowski and I would like to thank and commend the State's Attorney's Office under the leadership of former State Attorney Phil Archer and current State Attorney Will Scheiner, as well as the Brevard County Sheriff's Office, the Brevard County Clerk of Court's Office, and the Brevard County Judiciary in our pursuit for justice. The integrity, competency, and hard work of these entities is a testament to the professionalism of the law enforcement and legal communities in Brevard County. We would also like to thank our team of experts at the Innocence Project of Florida, who provided invaluable guidance, support, and resources in our pursuit to discredit the DNA evidence in the original state's case, as well as come up with new exculpatory evidence supporting Mr. Abramowski's innocence. Although we are ecstatic and relieved that Mr. Abramowski has finally achieved his long-awaited justice, we are still brokenhearted, and we hope that the victim, Mr. Crandall, and his family will eventually achieve their justice as well. Does anyone have any questions for us?
Yeah, I have one, Kevin. Whose idea was it to sort of keep the Innocence Project involvement like on the back burner and not publicize it a lot?
Well, the Innocence Project was not the lead investigative and legal entity involved in this. They did not want to have exposure as if they were running the show, and they were happy to be on the back burner and be in a support role in this matter, and that's why we decided to go that way. Now it's that we have achieved the exoneration. We do want to thank them, and we hope that the community will support that great organization because they do great and wonderful things.
I have 2 questions, one for you and then one for you, Mr. Abramowski. Is there any fear or worry that the state could still bring these charges back at all?
That's a great question, and there is no worry whatsoever that the state can bring these charges back. We did have the state dismiss the case with prejudice, so they cannot recharge him for these crimes. And should they even do, we believe that our case is so strong on innocence that it wouldn't go anywhere.
And then, Mr. Abramowski, I mean, for what you've been through, what you've gone through, many people might feel angry or bitter for the time that was stolen from them. How are you feeling?
Well, that rightly so. A person's going to be, a lot of pent-up frustration and stress and all that, and it leads to, bitterness and anger towards the people that have done this. But you have to understand with this, though, there was a different administration. The administration that's in there now actually took the time to do the right thing and investigate, and that's why we're standing here today. So, and also my attorney, Kevin McCann, said, let it go. He says, because you're not truly a free man if you're out there with all that pent up in your heart. So I'm learning to, just do the right thing and just move on. I got a great family, and I love them, and I'm not going to let this consume me.
Can you compare your emotions from when you first walked out of the jail with the possibility of this hanging over your head to now where it's over?
Well, I was telling Kevin and Jamie and the guys from Florida today, I says, when I first realized, that it was over finally, I was getting out of the shower yesterday, and I looked and I says, wow, it came into my mind, it's like I actually have freedom of choice again. And people don't realize the little things that you do and don't do and decide whatever you're going to do for a day. It's so important to you that when that's taken away from you, you don't know what you're really able to do in the free world until you don't have it no more, and you walk the line like they say in prison. Yeah, it's horrifying. It's very stressful, and it's painful.
Mr. Abramowski, I want to ask you, because obviously the state said they didn't have enough to move forward to have reasonable doubt in this case, but you have always said that you were innocent of this crime. They haven't used that word innocent or exonerated. Do you feel exonerated at this point? How important is it to you, after being 23 years in custody, that people hear what you have to say about not committing this crime?
Well, it's like go back to the interrogation tapes and everything. You know, they were saying this of mine was there and that was there. And I looked right at him. I told him, I says, it isn't there. I says, because I wasn't there. And, you know, I always knew from day one that all this was smoke and mirrors. You know, that's what they did with this. And, you know, Kevin's going to be able to answer that better than me because he, you know, really delved into it and he knows what was there and wasn't there. But, you know, if you really go and read the transcripts and stuff and take the time to understand what they're really saying on the stand, you know, like the DNA expert for the state of Florida, you'll see it was just all smoke and mirrors. And that's, you know, I just needed somebody like Kevin McCann to come in there and you know, like it was said about me, hold your feet to the fire. And you see where we're at today.
I'd like to elaborate a little bit on the question about exoneration. At this point, with the dismissal of the charges, Mr. Abramowski is fully exonerated, as if he was never charged, and he was put back into a place where he was in 2002, prior to being a suspect. And he currently is a free man. He's not a felon. He's not convicted. He's got his right to vote back. He's got his right to carry arms back. He is fully exonerated. So I just want to make that clear.
Hey, Jeff, I interviewed you twice in prison, and both times you had this look on your face like, I got to get out of here, because this is just such a bad place. I can't imagine what it's like if you're guilty to be in prison. What is it like if you're not guilty? I mean, what would some of those like really dark, you know, painful days like for you?
Well, one day when I was transferred to Martin CI 11 years ago, and I was sitting in the cell, and it's full of mold and the black mold and the chip paint, and it's just dirty in there, right? And I looked at all that environment, and I said, oh my God, this could be the rest of my life. And you wouldn't believe the devastation and just it's like the cloud over the top of you, you know, the dark cloud over the top of you. It's hard. But you got to keep moving forward, you know. You just got to let those feelings subside when they do and just keep moving forward. And that's what I did all those years. I never fell victim to, you know, creating my own monsters, you know, and it's you just got to keep moving forward. But the answer to that question really is it's a dangerous world in there. You know, there's a lot of stories I could tell, and you know, one day we'll sit down. But the thing is it's real hard just for, if you watch like 60 days in, you know, you see these people in there for 2-3 days and they're sick of it. Boy, they got a chance to go home. But when you get in there and you got no choice, you got to suck it up and do it. You got to do it.
And could you just talk about Jamie a little bit? Because nobody called me more over the time that you were incarcerated than her, and what she's meant as your champion here on the outside.
Well, now I know why she wasn't picking up on the phone. She was talking to you all the time. No, but, you know, that's with the children. You know, all through the years, I didn't realize what I was up against. I really thought that I had a chance with the appeal process because I was putting the truth in front of them, but they didn't want to see it. They were rubber stamping it. So the thing is I took my children through a roller coaster ride. This is the one, the motions I'm filing only to be dashed, and I put a lot of undue stress on my children that way, and I never had my kids, you know, to one day have them go through something like this. It had affected all of us.
I want to ask Attorney Crandall, and I know I asked you this Monday as well, but with this criminal case finally gone, should we anticipate a civil suit? Will there be a civil suit for some type of compensation Mr. Abramowski.
Mr. Abramowski and I are currently in communications about the next steps that we're going to take. Compensation is absolutely an avenue that we're going to walk down. Mr. Abramowski is entitled to compensation through state statute and other avenues. Which avenue we're going to take is still under discussion, but we are definitely going to move forward with compensation.
I have one more for Jeff. If you could just summarize your emotions from the past 4 months or so when you heard that you couldn't be getting out and then you go back and forth, how would you summarize it?
You know, everything that I've been through with the state of Florida, the old administration, not the new administration, because when I say the state, I'm talking about the past administration. You know, there came a time in my life where I really thought, wow, this might not work. You know, they might not let me out. But like you say, 4 months ago, the new administration that came in, you know, during the elections and everything, they sat there and I had that feeling like you say, wow, I might win, you know, and go home and prove my innocence. And it was like intoxicating. It really was. I felt good. But then again, I still had all that bitterness in me, so it's really hard to outwardly show that the joy that I had. You know, people look at me and they say, you look mad, you know, but you should be the happiest guy on the planet. I am. I'm hurt, and plus too, you know, it's hard to really trust what you go through. It's like it's hard to trust them. But I had Kevin. He handled it.
Jamie, would you mind answering a couple questions? Sure. You know, you kind of went through that same experience from day one. If you could summarize how you were feeling that day and then put it in tandem with how you're feeling now.
I've been horrified for the last 23 years. It's been a real roller coaster. I was 13 when this happened. I'm 37 now. So I've had to go through a lot of my life without him and fighting for him and begging and pleading for help. So that was really not a good time. I would not recommend that to anybody. But now it's just, I feel like a weight has lifted off my shoulders. It's indescribable how I feel and how thankful I am for Kevin and everybody who helped bring my dad back home, because that was always my number one dream, is to get him out and bring him back to me.
And even when we walked out of the jail that day, you still had the possibility that it might not be over.
I just knew in my heart from day one, the first day when he was arrested, I knew he would come home, and I knew this would be over. I knew we would prove that he was innocent, and I just, even afterwards, I had to keep telling him, Dad, this is over. You know, we got this. We're going to prove this, and there's nothing to worry about. And we did it. And I knew. I never had any doubt that we would be able to prove that he was innocent.
I'm not sure if you can answer this question or not, but, you know, I know Mr. Crandall is your friend.
Absolutely.
And do you have anything that you want to say to his family at all?
I sure do. I just, like I tried to say in court several times, but they wouldn't let me talk to him. You know, my heart goes out to Mr. Crandall's family. He was a friend of mine. He would call me up and we'd drive around and stuff, and he'd vent to me. He didn't really have anybody. He always told me, he says, man, you know, Jeff, you and I are close because you listen to me and you give me solid advice, you know, about his situations, especially with the people that he was dealing with. And I hope that one day they do seek justice, you know, and get their justice to whoever did this, you know. And, you know, FDLE knows. But I hope they get their justice one day. I really do.
I'd like to talk briefly about my journey and how I got involved and some of the steps I took to get us to this point. I am a retired law enforcement officer, and a local politician had approached me and asked me if I would look into Mr. Abramowski's case, because that politician believed that Mr. Abramowski was innocent and had been wrongfully convicted. One of the first steps I took was to listen to the Murder on the Space Coast podcast, season 4, which was from Florida Today with investigative reporter John Torres. It was time-consuming, to say the least, to go through that whole thing, but it was a season dedicated to Mr. Abramowski and allegations of wrongful conviction. At that point, I thought I was just going to look into a matter and conclude what the state concluded, and that Mr. Abramowski was guilty of the crime. After listening to the podcast, I was shocked with what I heard. And I get it, the podcast, and no offense to Mr. Torres and Florida Today, all podcasts can be created and manipulated and presented the way they want to. So I went into it thinking that. But as I went through it, the evidence was overwhelming with what I heard. And then after that review of the podcast, I started reviewing records, documents, transcripts, court documents, and everything I reviewed began to corroborate what Mr. Torres presented in his podcast. I then opened up a proactive investigation and reinvestigated the murder, which took me about 4 years. I traveled to Alabama several times. I interviewed multiple witnesses, and at the conclusion of my investigation, I was absolutely 100% convinced that Mr. Abramowski was innocent. So much so that I was able to generate exculpatory evidence, which I believe proves his innocence. It's not our obligation necessarily to prove a defendant's innocence, but I believe we have the absolute proof that he is innocent. It's very unfortunate that wrongful convictions happen at all. It happens. It happens more than it should. I do believe in today's day and age with new technology, the same technology that helped us re-examine the DNA evidence and helped us discredit the state's original DNA evidence and come up with new exculpatory DNA evidence. I believe that today's day and age, there should be and must be much less wrongful convictions, much less innocent people going to prison for crimes they did not commit. I'm confident that's happening in Brevard County. I'm confident with this new administration that cases like Mr. Abramowski's should not and would not happen again due to the integrity of the man in charge now, the integrity of the man in charge prior to this at the state's attorney's office, the technology they use, and the professionalism of the state's attorney's office and the local law enforcement. I do not believe in Brevard County another Jeffrey Abramowski situation will happen. Could it? It could. Mistakes sometimes do get made, unfortunately. I think in most, if not all, wrongful convictions, a suspect is identified and they start building a case around the suspect. And they start looking only at the suspect, and they do everything in their power to garner and generate evidence that may not be that strong of evidence, but they need something. They need to close a case. And in many instances, there's other evidence that's ignored or not discovered that could and would solve a case and prevent a wrong person from being convicted of a crime they didn't do. And hopefully the proper person convicted of a crime that they did do. I can't believe that we are here, in all honesty. It hasn't sunk in with me yet. Mr. Abramowski said it has sunk in with him. In 2024, actually 2023, about 2 years ago, I presented my investigative findings to Mr. Archer, who was the state attorney at the time. He assigned my case and my matter to his chief trial attorney, William Scheiner, and we worked hand in hand for many months going through the old case and going through my new investigation to the point that they knew there was something there. And they supported retesting of the DNA evidence, and they supported new testing of the murder weapons. Once Mr. Archer retired and Mr. Scheiner became the new state attorney, Mr. Scheiner continued what Mr. Archer had begun. And we worked hand in hand for many, many months, very closely and very well together to get to the point where the new DNA testing was absolutely supported, it was not contested, And once we got the results, my motion for retrial for Mr. Abramowski was not contested by the state's attorney's office. They supported it, and we were very blessed to go through an uncontested hearing in April to vacate Mr. Abramowski's conviction and sentence. However, at that time, he was still pending the murder charges. At that point, when a conviction is vacated, the defendant is set back to where they were before the original trial occurred and before the conviction. So he was still pending his murder charges. And Mr. Abramowski and I had the ability to work more closely together since he was not in prison anymore. And we spent several months working on getting his charges dismissed. And we are so blessed that the state's attorney's office bought into our argument and dismissed the charges this past Monday. And for it not to be contested, for us not to go to trial, it's a relief, and in my opinion, shows that this man deserved to be exonerated.
Absolutely.
And that's where we are today.
Real quick, could you put into simple terms what that evidence was? They previously found what, and then you guys showed that as far as the DNA?
So I wasn't around in 2002 when Mr. Crandall was unfortunately murdered and the investigation took place. It's my understanding that there was absolutely no evidence against Mr. Abramowski. However, there was some DNA recovered under Mr. Crandall's fingernail, such a small amount that they couldn't conclude what it actually was. It wasn't a skin flake, it wasn't hair, they don't know. But it had two profiles in it, the profile of the victim, Mr. Crandall, and an unknown profile. Of that unknown profile, there was not enough DNA matter to make a match with anybody, let alone Mr. Abramowski. And there was no ability to retest it because it was such a minimal amount, so there was no confirmation test, and the defense never had an opportunity to test it either. During that testing, however, there was some unique marker or unique characteristic of that DNA. What it is, I can't tell you because I'm not a DNA expert. And I don't believe the DNA analyst really could tell you either because the DNA analyst at the time has never experienced that before. So there was a lot of guesswork that happened back then, and that guesswork concluded that Mr. Abramowski may have that same unique marker in his DNA profile. And because of that, the state concluded, and the jury heard, that there was a DNA match, which I absolutely disagree with. There was not a DNA match. Today's testing, however, or the recent testing in today's era, was new DNA testing with new DNA science, updated technology, and we actually were able to test the murder weapons now. And the murder weapons were not tested back in 2002 when the murder took place, or 2006 when the trial took place, but we were able to test the murder weapons, and that testing with updated DNA technology concluded that Mr. Abramowski is excluded as a contributor to the profiles that were discovered on those weapons.
Are you ready, Kevin, for lots of inmate letters from around the state?
I believe this will be my last journey with a wrongfully convicted person. But if something falls on my lap that interests me, I may not turn it down. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for coming and caring. I appreciate that. The whole family does. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you.
Sir, do you have some photographs and letters or transcripts that we can take pictures of to help kind of tell the story?
When I get your email address, and I'll go through some things. I may not.
Probably like a nondescript picture of home, the murder weapons, and then.
The only problem is for me, and you guys know way more than I do about copyrighted material. I don't know what I can release and what I can't release, but I know I have some material that I can send to you to, to help make your story robust.
Do you have video of the day your client was released from jail?
I personally don't, but there was some media present that day, so I know there's video and photos out there somewhere.
All right, I'll give you my email now.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Thank you so much.